Hello everyone, I'm meteorologist Chris Kubal here. I wanted to jump on with you and talk a little bit about our storm system that's moving through and our weather impact alert. We have some soaking rain that's unfolding at this point, and eventually we will see the transition over to snow. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to talk a little bit about what I'm seeing and what's ahead. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop them into the Facebook live stream, and I'll field some if they come in at the end of this broadcast. I'll step off screen and drive the radar a little bit and try to answer any of those questions that you might have. This is the scene out across various points in Iowa. Soggy is the name of the game at this juncture on those cameras in central and western Iowa. Timeline of events, roughly we're talking transitioning from soaking rain to more of the snow, and that's going to center around midnight, a little bit earlier in western Iowa, a little bit later into eastern Iowa. Also keep in mind there's a lot of moisture out there, and as temperatures plummet, we will lean to a flash freeze scenario on the roads, meaning that standing water is going to ice up very quickly. And there's also going to be blizzard conditions as well out into the open. In town, in city limits, things going to be vastly different than when you step out and away from city limits. Rural open areas will experience blizzard conditions, whiteout conditions, and dangerous travel as we go into early Wednesday morning. The wind's strong enough where we get to the threshold of worrying about power outages, property damage, and tree damage, things like that. So blizzard warning is in place for the counties in red here. And in eastern Iowa, this is a high wind warning. Basically, we're thinking less snow impacts eastern Iowa, and that's the key difference here. Of course, the visibility is going to suffer with any of that snow that's floating through. Very soggy right now as we look outside over Des Moines. The capital city is at 46 degrees right now. Wind is northeast at 7. It's starting to come around to the north. The wind shift is occurring now, and that stronger wind is going to be on the uptick over the next 90 minutes or so. But the snow transition is delayed behind that shift by about another 90 minutes. So either side of midnight, that's when I expected around the metro. And the I-35 corridor points in western Iowa get into it sooner, as you'd expect. And after, as we go into eastern Iowa, temperatures plummeting. There will be some bursts of heavy snow. We could reach up to an inch per hour snowfall rates, especially as we transition. That's where we're going to see the heaviest of that snow. So far, rainfall totals observed 1/2 inch to an inch, widespread across central and southern Iowa especially. 1 to 2 inches total is expected across many communities in central Iowa. If we receive more than that, we'll have trouble on the river and lakes situation, but at this point I think we're well in line to stay in that range, and in that range we should do just fine. Checking in the road conditions, wet, seasonal if you will, across central Iowa. Starting to see that downturn, partially covered roads out into western and northwestern Iowa, even a couple of pockets of pink in there. I have the wind gusts plotted on this particular map, of course on the radar picture as well. Spencer gusting to 54 miles per hour, 52 in Carroll. When we start seeing wind gusts rise north of 35, we start thinking about blizzard type conditions. And certainly these winds are still evolving. They're still ramping up. And at times I do think we tick over 60 miles per hour. Maybe not in a common occurrence or persistent occurrence from hour to hour, mind you, but at times we may cruise up to that threshold. Here's that wind shift. It's just now starting to get into Ames and Des Moines and then down towards about the Afton or Murray area, down towards Highway 34. And then that transition to snow is occurring further back to the west, and there will be a burst of heavier snow in there as well. Still solid rain in central Iowa, a little bit of a dry slot down towards Oskaloosa, Ottumwa, and the Albia area, but we are starting to transition to snow here. I'm going to pull up a different product, and what I want you to look at here, this is called the correlation coefficient, and what we're looking at is kind of the uniformity of what's floating around in the sky. Now this concentric ring, that's indicative of a melting layer, so we have snow way up high in the atmosphere, then it melts, and then it becomes rain as it gets down low. The radar site right in the middle. Of course, that radar beam is pointed upwards as it looks out at a distance, so it's looking right through that. So what I can say right here is that changeover line is just starting to get into the Carroll area, up towards Humboldt, just to the northwest of Fort Dodge. Denison getting in on that as well. So this transition line is moving to the east as we speak, about right on par with the timing that we've expected with this one. Overall storm system is producing thunderstorms down to the south, strong to severe storms, but we're on the cold side of this system, and the wind is just stacking up, very deep area of low pressure. And what that does is help accentuate the wind as it rockets in from the north. Kind of seeing that gradient squeezed a little bit on the backside. The northwest and west side are going to be the strongest winds associated with this system. And that's what we have plotted here. Wind gusts again in Futurecast as we continue on. Excuse me, just before 10 o'clock, starting to see that rain snow line continue to move eastward. Here's midnight, right up and down I-35, almost perfectly north to south. Wind gusts commonly 55 to 60, I think, are going to be pretty common numbers as we go through the overnight. That rain snow line continues to move eastward, and those winds persist. Each passing hour, and especially as the snow stays overhead, the worse conditions are going to be. We will see whiteouts transform. Thankfully, that we don't have any snow currently on the ground, or this would be a completely different scenario. We'd be talking about impassable type roads. And while that still may occur if we catch some drifting just right, it should be on a localized level, but travel more or less treacherous tonight due to the conditions at hand. Even as those winds ease, they're still running 40 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts the middle of tomorrow afternoon, not fully relenting until we get into early on Thursday morning. Those numbers significantly relaxed here. Okay, I've been preaching this the last couple of days. Don't get fixated on these specific snow ranges because you're never going to be able to go out and measure that. But what I do want to point out is that heaviest access of snow is running from about Atlantic to Carroll to Pocahontas, Fort Dodge, up through Mason City and maybe the Albert Lea, Rochester, Minnesota area. So what is it that we're going to take away from this is that these are going to be the areas of worst impact. Those who see the most amount of snow are going to see the worst impacts. Now that said, with a blizzard, it doesn't take all that much snow to produce whiteout conditions. It's primarily a wind-driven component here. All you need is some. In fact, in my history, in my career, I have seen blizzards where there was no new snow that fell. It just used the snow that was on the ground. We have snow that's falling, and that's what makes this one particularly potent. Here's the wind gusts as we move through the 8 o'clock hour. 52 miles per hour in Carroll, starting to ramp up in Atlantic to 43, 40 in Creston, and these numbers will continue to strengthen across as this transition line moves its way eastward. Excuse me. We do have the wind gusts strongest early tomorrow morning. I think once we hit mid-morning, those numbers are going to start to come down a little bit, albeit slowly. Sustained winds 30 to 35 miles per hour. That's very impressive as well. We have the wind and snow threats here. And notice the colors. It's kind of a color game here, but when you see those reds and pinks, that's signifying that the threat level's a little bit higher. And the wind and snow overlapping here early on Wednesday morning, and that's going to lead to detriment when it comes to travel, especially rural open areas. If you want to get about town or within city, yeah, you're going to run into some slushy and snowy roads, but typically there's some obstruction when you're in city limits that prevents that strongest wind from materialize. So there is a very clear night and day difference, proverbial, once you get outside of city limits. It becomes so much worse in those rural wide open spaces. 27 degrees tonight with our overnight low. Minimal movement on the temperature tomorrow. It's a stiff north wind that is ushering in colder air. That snow should end by about mid-morning around the metro and then late morning into eastern Iowa. Looking ahead next Friday, we do have an additional chance for seeing some snowflakes coming in. A bit of a mix in there too, central and southern Iowa. This is going to be more of a longer duration, lighter snow. But in the end, I think it is going to add up on us, so we're not quite done yet, and I definitely want to talk a little bit more about that going forward, but we just have so much going on right now. Looking at this 10-day forecast, you can see that we're going to swing out of it in a big way. I think temperatures are going to be stunted a little bit the next few days, but we'll pull out of it. Next Monday and Tuesday, you really start to see those readings begin to jump up on us, and we'll be targeting 70 degrees. It's pretty crazy overall that's kind of what we're thinking here. That is classic March type weather in the grand scheme of things, where really you can see these really strong and potent storm systems come to fruition. And then the next week you warm up to 70 degrees. I'm going to pop back to the radar picture ever so slightly. I will say I think the blue is overdone here just a touch as it pops back up on screen. And we can see that when I jump back and forth to the CC and that mix line. So again, right up here I think is where we're starting to see that transition. If I loop it, you can see that ring was bigger and it's starting to erode a little bit. So you can see that that mix is starting to, well, I shouldn't say mix, but the snow is starting to erode into the rain. Overall. Pretty potent in the grand scheme when it comes to these winds. These are some of the strongest forecast winds I've had to put on a winter storm in my career, and so far I think we're on par to see several locations get north of 50, 55 miles per hour. I expect to see some 60-degree wind gusts coming in as we get into tomorrow morning. So we're just in the infancy of this storm system. The rain, if you will, at this point is really dominating, but the snow is starting to push in from the west. I'll tell you, there were locations out in Nebraska today that looked really, really nasty, and truthfully, just some of the conditions you don't want to mess with overall. I'll pull up one picture here real quick just so you can get a sense of what's going on, and it's just going to pop in on screen here. And this was a traffic cam out in Nebraska, central Nebraska. I forget exactly where, but that's nasty. You can see the road conditions are bad enough, and then the visibility is just horrid. So that's kind of a taste of what's going to be slipping over the border. It's just going to take a little bit of time to do so. And right now we're seeing that rain snow line push its way eastward. Right now just west of Fort Dodge to about Carroll. You can see the blue transition here on the screen in the road conditions. I'm going to be here tracking things as we go through the overnight Peter Warner in tomorrow morning to keep you updated for that morning drive. I would say in town, in the city driving, you'll be okay, but please try not to venture out of town tonight. It will be treacherous conditions. And again, thankful that we don't have any more snow on the ground, or this would be a drastically different conversation I'd be having with you tonight. Still potent winds. Watch out for power outages, secure any loose objects. If they are still outside, there is time to do that for you. But a very potent wind coming in here with some snow. Expect some blizzard conditions at times tonight into Wednesday. We'll go back to the standard loop. Thank you for joining me on this special broadcast here on our social media, YouTube pages, Facebook. Thanks for joining me.